tamper with them as they are for emergency use only. In an unlikely event of an emergency, a uniform crew member will be the system down the boat. Instructions for the use are located inside the lockers and the seat. Emergency exits are located on both decks, on either side of the vessel midship. Please do not stay in the seats or send the seat back to railings. All familiar about the vessel know that these breath do not burn the plane. They come back to the cautionary stairs, which are located forward and below. Please do not congregate on them, and please use the handrails. Smoking or vaping on this vessel is unlawful and is not permitted anywhere on board. Flash photography at or near the pilot house is prohibited. Please keep your hands and arms inside the vessel at all times. Interfering with the safe operation of this vessel is illegal and subject to your civil penalty. If you have questions or need assistance, please contact Uniform Crew. Once again, welcome aboard.
All right, folks. So, as we get started, let me first of all reiterate 3 things from that safety recording. So, I want everyone's attention for the next 1 minute. If you don't listen to anything else I say, listen to this next minute, please, because I'm going to do some safety information. Number 1, do not stand on chairs or benches. You're welcome to walk around upstairs and downstairs all throughout the ride, but no one of any age should be standing on a seat or a bench. Do not sit or climb on the railings around the boat, and no smoking or vaping anything anywhere on the boat. The restrooms and the bar downstairs, you're welcome to walk around upstairs and downstairs all throughout the ride. Now, let me begin by telling you that I think that you made a great choice coming with us this evening. Chicago is a great place to learn about. We might not be the biggest or oldest city you can find, but we do offer something special. We are renowned for having a dense variety of styles of architecture in a small area. We'll talk about a lot of architecture and a little Chicago history as we make our way along the Chicago River this evening. And therein lies our first pop quiz. Folks, what's the name of the river we're floating on? The Chicago River, not a trick question. This is the Chicago River, nice and easy to remember where we'll be for our 45 minutes together. Now, we're going to start by looking behind the Trump Tower. We'll talk about this one later, but first we're going to look ahead to the right. Behind the Trump Tower is that dark steel rectangular tower. The dark steel building ahead to the right is AMA Plaza, headquarters of the American Medical Association. It's from 1973 by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Now, Mies van der Rohe was a pioneer of that style, dark steel, minimal ornamentation, rectangular patterns. We call that international style. It is not exciting to our modern eyes, but it was revolutionary in the 1940s when Mies van der Rohe started his career. You see, his philosophy was that architects should focus almost exclusively on making the outsides of buildings fancy, and no other way around. Architects should focus almost exclusively on making the insides of buildings useful and practical, instead of what he said his contemporaries were doing too much of, focusing on making the outsides fancy. So Mies van der Rohe went all the way the other way, designing these dark steel, rectangular buildings, all about creating practical interiors. Now, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, he was a professor at the Illinois Institute of Technology here in Chicago. Not all of his students ended up liking rectangles like he did. On the right side of the boat, these 2 circular towers were designed by one of these van der Rohe students. The 2 circular towers on the right are called Marina City. They're from 1968 by Bertrand Goldberg. Now, Goldberg was inspired by nature. He said no square shapes in nature. He wanted round, natural shapes for people to live in. In addition, get a good look at this parking ramp, the circular open-air parking structure up to the right. When Marina City went up in the 1960s, not very many people lived in the city center of Chicago. So in order to attract residents to make it from downtown, Goldberg built Marina City with amenities. It had its own grocery store, movie theater, bowling alley, skating rink, marina on the river, and those parking ramps above. Folks, having seen those parking structures, you might have gotten nervous imagining cars falling right off and into the river, but there's nothing to worry, that's only happened twice. That's true, but the whole truth is that it never happened on accident or due to foul play. Both times were filmed stunts. One was for Steve McQueen's movie The Hunter, and the other was for an auto insurance commercial. Now, after this bridge on the right, this red brick building on the right is the Reed Murdoch Center. It's 111 years old. Chicago school style architecture. Chicago school style is defined by being an early example of using load-bearing internal steel framing. You see, the brick is just decorative. It's the steel inside that holds the building up. And that concept of using load-bearing internal steel was first developed here in Chicago, primarily in the 1870s by architect William LeBaron Jenney. The first skyscraper was a William Jenney building, finished in 1873. It was called the Home Insurance Building, and that first skyscraper was a whopping 10 stories tall. Now, it was never the tallest building in the world, but the reason it was the first skyscraper is that it was the first relatively tall building to use low-bearing steel. And again, that one was by William Jenney. The Home Insurance Building was torn down in 1930, unfortunately. And that brick building we mentioned, it's still Chicago's style. It's by George Nimitz. Now, thanks to modern technology, the train will cross the river completely undetectable. On the right side of the boat, on the right, extra large and in charge, this is the Merchandise Mart. The Merchandise Mart on the right is from 1930, this limestone behemoth. It was actually the biggest building in the world by floor space in 1930, with 400,000 square meters or 4.2 million square feet of floor space. It's Art Deco style, vertical lines, geometric ornamentation, and getting forward at the top with the use of set decks. All that together, that's Art Deco style. Now, the Merchandise Mart was designed by Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White, and paid for by Marshall Field's department stores, consolidate their warehouses into one giant warehouse downtown. It's a mixed office building today, and up till 2008, the U.S. Postal Service gave the Merch Mart its own unique zip code or postal code. That was 60654. Now, I'm going to start bouncing back and forth between left and right a bit more, folks. On the left side of the boat, on the left in the direction of travel, we have this curved glass tower. The curved glass tower, green color, that's 333 West Wacker Drive. It's by Cohn, Peterson, and Fox from 1983. It's an office building, and it's a great example of contextual architecture. Contextualism means matching the surroundings. Green glass, greenish river, curve in the building, bend in the river where it's built, matching the surroundings, that's contextual architecture. Now, bouncing to the right again. On the right side of the boat, the round glass tower with the arch at the base is called River Point. It's from 2017 by Picard and Chilton, and it's LEED Platinum certified, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. One of the key factors in making it environmentally friendly is that it was constructed using a lot of recycled materials. All right, now after this bridge, we're going to look on the right. One more building on the right, then I'll go back to the left. So, on the right side of the boat is this glass tower with an alarmingly narrow base. You can wave to yourself up above us too. This is 150 North Riverside Plaza. It's by Getch Partners from 2017, and here's how it stays upright. So up to the right, it's got those diagonal steel beams that focus its weight to its central core, and inside the top of the tower, there are 150,000 gallons, or about 450,000 liters of water in a mass damper. When wind blows against the building, the water in tanks on tracks is shifted against the wind to keep it steady. Now, it would stay upright without the mass damper, but what prevents it from swaying nauseatingly on windy days, and actually mass dampers are pretty common. Lots of skyscrapers have some sort of shiftable weight to help keep them steady in a strong wind. Now, bouncing to the left, Getch Partners were so pleased with those striking diagonal undersides that they reflected back to them with their newer buildings. So here on the left, this is Bank of America Tower, brand new-ish. It's from 2021. The shiny diagonal supports are meant to reflect back to the diagonal undersides we just talked about on 50 North Riverside. Both of them are by Getch Partners architects. Now, sticking to the left, on the left side of the boat, this limestone building is the Civic Opera Building, labeled for your convenience. Here on the left side of the boat, the Civic Opera Building is from 1928 by Graham Anderson, Probst and White. It is home of the second largest opera auditorium in the United States, 3,500 seats. And if you look up at the whole opera house, the whole thing resembles a giant throne. It has two armrests and a backrest, and the seat faces west. People have theorized that 20th century railroad businessman, Mr. Samuel Insull, who paid for the building and lived in the penthouse at the top for a year till he went bankrupt, wanted the opera house to be a throne overlooking his railway business empire to the west, while turning his back to New York, where he didn't get his dream job of CEO of General Electric. It's a great story, and it's not true. The truth is, Graham Anderson, Probst and White probably designed those narrow upper floor plans independently of Mr. Insull to allow for something practical: cross ventilation. Letting the breeze easily cross through the windows was very important for air conditioning, and those narrow floor plans allowed for nice, easy cooling cross breezes. Now, way up high to the left, way up high to the left, are those two white antennas on top of that giant, dark steel tower. That, of course, way up high to the left, is the tallest building in the city of Chicago. The name of it, spelled W-I-L-L-I-S, pronounced Sears Tower. Its original name was Sears Tower. Its official name, since 2009, has been Willis Tower, but in our hearts, for the most part, Willis Tower is still Sears Tower. Now, we're going to get a much better view of it in just a moment, and we'll actually get a view on both sides of the boat, because we're going to turn around right next to it. But it was designed by Skidmore, Owens & Merrill, with lead architect Mr. Bruce Graham and lead architectural engineer Dr. Fazlur Rahman Khan. It was the tallest building in the world for 23 years, from 1973 to 1996. It's still the tallest building in the city, so how tall is it? It is 1,454 feet, or 443 meters tall, and it has 110 stories. 1,454 feet, 443 meters, 110 stories, and none of those numbers include the antennas on top. Those two antennas can be removed and replaced, and so they don't count toward the height. All right, we're waiting. We're going to turn around, and then it'll be on the right side of the boat. Once we turn around, it's starting to come into view right in front of us. Waiting, still can't see the top. There we go. Now me standing right here, I can see the top now. And of course, if you wave up to those 5 glass boxes sticking out near the top, there will be people inside them waving back down to you. Has anyone been in those glass boxes? I have. That's the Ledge, a feature of Sky Deck, the public observation deck on the 103rd floor of the Willis Tower. Now, as I mentioned, it was the tallest building in the world for 23 years. Now, it was first surpassed in 1996. So since then, 29 years have gone by. But what's a little surprising is that even though it was the tallest building in the world for 23 years, in the 29 years since it was first overtaken, it's been overtaken over 20 times. It's not even in the top 20 tallest buildings in the world anymore. And there's a pretty interesting reason for that. You see, the Sears Tower came at an interesting cusp in the timeline of tall building technology. Here's what I mean. Newer, taller buildings use composite frames, which uses steel with aluminum and concrete to make lighter weight but still very strong frames. The Sears Tower, over 50 years old, is from a time when they were only using steel for the load-bearing support, and it's actually still the tallest steel-framed skyscraper in the world. 1,454 feet, 443 meters, 110 stories. Now, the original owner, main tenant, and company that paid for the building was, of course, the headquarters of Sears department stores and catalogs. Sears moved out and sold it in the 90s to private equity firm Blackstone. Blackstone sold the naming rights to Willis Insurance Group of London, England in 2009. So today, Sears isn't around much. Blackstone owns the building, and Willis Insurance owns the name of the building. And none of those companies is the building's main tenant. Does anyone know what company is the main tenant of Willis Tower today? I think someone said it, United Airlines. Headquarters of United Airlines is the main tenant of Willis Tower. And finally, folks, give me a guess. Give me a guess. How many elevators does the Willis Tower have? Someone says 20, someone said 100. It's 107. There are 107 elevators in the Willis Tower. That's because very few of them go all the way from the bottom to the top. If you're heading to an office way up high, you'll have to ride 2 or 3 different elevators. That relay, where you reach the top of one, you have to walk across the lobby, start again. That relay system prevents most of the space on most of the floors from being just elevators, which make for some sparse floor plans. Bouncing to the left. On the left side of the boat, right there at eye level, you can see the locomotive of a train right there under the street. This is the train shed for Chicago Union Station. This is where the platforms are, where passengers get on and off the trains. Now, Chicago Union Station is the 4th busiest train station in the United States, being an important cross-country hub for Amtrak, and also being the busiest hub of Metra, which is our regional rail network in Chicagoland. Thousands of residents use it between the suburbs and cities. The 3 train stations that are busier than Chicago, and this is by using total passengers, not just Amtrak. The 3 that beat it are all in New York: New York Penn, Grand Central, and Jamaica Station. Now, on the left side of the boat, this limestone building is 2 North Riverside Plaza. 2 North Riverside on the left is from 1929 by Holabird and Groot. It's Art Deco style, but what I like to mention is that public plaza with the trees right above the water taxi there. That was the first public space that an architect intentionally designed along the Chicago River. It represents the beginnings of Chicagoans starting to view the river as an amenity rather than just an industrial corridor, which it used to be. Now, way up high to the left. Sorry, it's those white X on the roof, I'm a little late for some of you, I'm sorry. But on top of this building, on top of this gray building, are white steel beams that crisscross on the top. You can't see them anymore from here. But those are trusses on the roof. And the reason they're there is because the south end of this gray building on the left actually is structurally hanging from the trusses on the roof, and the truss system only reaches to the ground around the perimeter of the building. That's because there wasn't very much space to support the building on that piece of land, because there's railroads there. Now, the building is from the 90s by Perkins Quill. It's been owned and occupied by the Boeing Company since 2002, but it was built in the 90s to be the headquarters of more of a down-to-earth company, that being Morton Salt. Morton Salt is still based in Chicago, but not in the Boeing building anymore. Folks, if you look directly on the right, there's a Starbucks there. Folks, the thing about Starbucks is that Chicago was the first city outside Seattle to have a Starbucks. We're the first step that Starbucks took on their journey to global domination. Now, this red brick building on the right stands on the location where in 1860, a temporary convention center called the Wigwam, which was a big reinforced tent, hosted the convention that nominated Abraham Lincoln to run for president, right there on the right, on the banks of the Chicago River. All right. Now, folks, this section of the river is very significant. This is where the 3 branches of the Chicago River meet. The south branch of the river is behind us, the north branch is there on the left, and then we're heading back to the main branch of the river, ahead to the right. This fork in the river is called Wolf Point. No one's quite sure where the name Wolf Point came from. I've always suspected someone probably saw a wolf at some point. Now, sticking to the left, on the left side of the boat, this tall glass tower, the tallest of these new glass towers, is the new Salesforce Tower. It is our newest complete office building, just finished in 2023, designed by Pelly Clark Pelly Architects. Now, the Salesforce Tower stands on the location where in 1833, 192 years ago, the settlers along the river here had a town meeting to decide for the first time what the official name of our newly organized township would be. What name did they choose? Chicago, not a trick question, it was Chicago. I'll also let you know where the word Chicago came from. So the word Chicago came from the native Potawatomi people. Now, the Potawatomi were the people who lived in this region for generations before anyone like me got anywhere near here. The Potawatomi first encountered non-natives in the form of a couple of Frenchmen, Louis Joliet and Jacques Marquette, in the 1670s. And the Potawatomi told the Frenchmen that the river here was called Chicago. Kinda. It was closer to Chicago, probably, but our name is an approximation of the Potawatomi name of this river. But we might have looked into other names if we'd also learned what that Potawatomi name actually meant. It meant the place of bad smells. That's true. It's because the river flowed through that swamp, and in that swamp grew an abundance of a species of little wild, anyone know? Onions or wild garlic, and in the summer heat those onions along the river would ripen and rot and stink up the place, and that's how the Potawatomi referred to the river. So New York's the Big Apple, Chicago's the smelly onion. Now, after the next bridge on the right is that limestone tower. Limestone tower up to the right, that's the LaSalle Wacker building. It's on the street corner of LaSalle Street and Wacker Drive. The building is from 1930 by Holabird and Roof. It's Art Deco style, modern building. This is another example of bridge up to the right. After the next bridge up to the right is that glass tower with the white framing going up around the corners to a peak to roof. That's 77 West Wacker Drive. It's by Ricardo Bofill from 1992, and it's postmodern style. Postmodern means combining past with present. Roman arches at the bottom, modern glass and steel throughout the building, and a Greek temple roof on top. Past and present together, that's postmodern style. And now for something completely different. On the right is the shorter concrete 55 West Wacker, a great example of brutalism. Brutalist architecture is not meant to be an insulting term. It gets its name from the French word brut, meaning raw, referring to the raw, unpolished concrete exterior. This from 1968 by C.F. Burton. All right, jumping ahead. A good deal ahead of us. A good deal ahead to the right is a green tower with a golden spire on top. A green tower with gold on top, just catching the last of the evening light. It's from 1928 by the Burnham Brothers. It's Art Deco style. It's called the Carbide and Carbon Building. And that green tower, taken up to a golden water, was built during Prohibition, when all alcohol was illegal in the United States. It's meant to resemble a champagne bottle in protest to Prohibition. It's the only building in the city clad with green terracotta, and the gold on top is real gold leaf. Now, I'll just mention briefly, moving backwards from the champagne bottle, the big fancy building with the dome on top that we're passing on the right, that's the old jeweler's building. It's French Beaux-Arts style, which means it has an ornate base, a simpler stack of floors, and an ornate top to match the base. Now, after the bridge on the left is the Trump Tower. It was finished in 2009. In 2009, designed by Skidmore, Buildings and Merrill, with lead architect, Chicago-born and raised, Mr. Adrian Smith. Now, the second tower about 1,300 meters, which includes the permanent decorative spire on top. This is 9 stories. Now, what I want you to notice is the roof line. The second highest roof of the building is the same height as our first building, which is and the lowest roof of the building is the same height as the building with the clock tower and the original building. Those roofs are essentially it is the second highest building in town. Now, after the next bridge on the left, the next bridge on the left is that limestone tower with vertical lines and a very ornate top. After the bridge on the left, that's the tallest in the city. For a couple months, so see your tower going. And Edward Lavelle Stone originally clad that tall white building with imported Italian Carrara marble. Now that is expensive. Same stuff Michelangelo would carve with. It made the whole building glisten on sunny days, but after 9 years, those plates of marble, 3/4 of an inch thick, started to crack and fall to the sidewalk. Now, the city made the architects reflat it in a sturdier stone, and what's up there today instead is Caroline granite. The process, you can see it again behind us to go to the right side. The process of replacing the marble with the granite cost $80 million. That was half what it was to build the building. It was an expensive estate that goes to show. Never take marble for granted. Yeah. Folks, that story's true. It's not only the setup to a terrible joke, it's the truth. I'll admit my delivery on it could be rocky, but it's important to me that you understand that my boss hates this joke, and it takes real stones to tell it. Now, ahead to the right is this very tall blue glass tower. Look at the wiggly shape. Very tall, wiggly blue glass tower. That is the St. Regis, Chicago. Part hotel, part residential. The St. Regis was finished in 2020. It is 1,200 feet or 365 meters tall with 105 stories. It's currently the 3rd tallest building in town, and it's currently the tallest building in the world designed by a woman, a lead female architect. That woman is Jeannie Dang. Jeannie Dang is based here in Chicago. She's actually born and raised in Illinois, a hometown in Belvedere, not far away. Now, way up near the top of the St. Regis is a gap, 2 floors seemingly missing. As the building went up, the steel frame was showing more potential than they had originally calculated that it would sway in the wind. Now, they always knew it was going to sway. The problem was it was bending, showing enough potential to bend more than they anticipated, that in extreme conditions, it might possibly crack some of the windows, because glass doesn't bend much, it just breaks. So in order to protect all the windows, they relieved the pressure by leaving this creatively called blow-through feature. The elevators, utility shafts, and stairwell are still enclosed on the sound map, and the building is still doing the process. Now, as we reach our easternmost let me tell you some more about this. In the city of Chicago's earliest days, we treated the Chicago River as anyone else who included in the 19th century would treat the river. In a word, we threw all of our waste into the river. The river was an open sewer flowing into Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan is our source of drinking water. Now that sounds like a problem. Being Chicagoans, we worked hard to make it so that and instead of solving the issue, we just made it go away by making the Chicago River the only natural river in the world coming to the river on the It's coast to its house. Not far west of the big Plains River, which is actually separate from the Great Lakes and Northwest Mississippi. To carry our waste away, we connected the Chicago to the Plains by building a canal between them named the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. And at 3 a.m., January 2nd, 1900, we blew up the dam we had built separating the river from that new canal. The Chicago filled in the canal, connecting to the Des Plaines at a lower elevation of the lake. So with a new lowest point to flow toward, the Chicago River reversed, taking water for the first time from Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River Valley via the Des Plaines River to the west. Not all of our neighbors were as pleased with us as we were with ourselves. In fact, our neighbors around the lake, the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Indiana, sued the state of Illinois in federal court for draining the lake and proved that our river would eventually take enough water to make part of the lake shallow enough to not be navigable anymore. So we were forced to build. There on the right side of the boat, I know the beautiful views on the left, but there on the right side of the boat, those 2 great gates, that's the Chicago Harbor Lock. The only direct connection between the lake and river, but it still separates them with a series of closable gates built in the 1930s to slow down the flow of lake water entering the still reversed but much cleaner Chicago River. Now take a moment to enjoy the view. I'll get back on the mic in just a minute. Oh, remember, do not stand on the chairs or benches. Folks, well, we're already heading back towards the dock. But let me tell you, we only got about 10 minutes left together. There's still more tour, but I do want to mention that it's time to think about hitting the heads, which is boat speak for using the restroom. You're going to do that for this market. Now, on the right side of the boat, directly to the right, that curvy dark steel and glass tower is Lake Point Tower. To the right is just behind us. The curvy dark tower is Lake Point Tower. Finished in 1968 by Shipwright and Heydrich architects. It is curvilinear international style, and it's a little lonely. It's the only privately owned building on this side of the shore drive. That's because ever since our city's founding, we've had policies to guarantee our entire lakefront would be public parks, beaches, etc. Technically, Lake Point Tower has never been accepted in that policy because technically there's still public land wrapped around the space. But it certainly was controversial. There's no room to build neighbors next to it, and our policy of protecting our public lakefront were made stricter after it was built. My boss puts it simply, boss to the bridge here. My boss puts it simply, Lake Point Tower, despite its controversial positioning, was allowed to get built because Mayor Daley let it get built. That's Richard J. Daley, mayor of Chicago throughout the 1960s, as opposed to his son, Richard M. Daley, mayor of Chicago throughout the 1990s. You can tell from their dynasticism alone that they were, the Daleys threw their weight around quite a bit in all things big and small around Chicago. Now, on the right side of the boat, in fact, actually, I don't always say this on tour, but let me tell you. So we actually have two examples of Daley's, each mayor, that we can see from right here. One, Lake Point Tower was allowed to get built because Mayor Daley said it could, Richard J. Daley, Daley Sr. And then, actually, the reason why the Trump Tower has a spire has nothing to do with architects or the name on the building, but because Mayor Richard M. Daley just didn't like the design of the building without the spire. The architect showed the city council the mayor the design, and the mayor said, I don't like it, do something to make it look nicer. And then they put the spire on it, and then the mayor said, okay. So there's two examples of both Daleys just throwing their weight around. Now, on the right side of the boat, this brick and green glass residential building is Riverview, the one that we're passing there to the right. Riverview, if you're at the bottom, the first floor is actually a row of townhouses, each with its own personal entrance, each 4-story tall, and each townhouse has a private elevator to its private rooftop terrace. You know, they sound nice. If you're looking for a home, I'd recommend the townhomes at Riverview. That being said, I'm not sure what they sell for. I do know that not many store guys. In addition, Riverview is not only built in green glass on the river. Part of the river left here. You can imagine the rivers in color. Now, the green color in the river water today is naturally it's created by green algae growing on the river. And the water naturally here. That being said, that every year, once a year, the river becomes unnaturally green. When on the Saturday before St. Patrick's Day, who does it? Anyone know? The Plumbers Union in town, Local 130, dyes the river an unnaturally bright Kelly green. Now, let me make it make sense for you. The reason why the plumbers is that the dye actually originates as a plumbing tool used to trace leaks. A leaky pipe is easier to spot if the water coming out is the right color. That's why the plumbers had this dye. They started dyeing the river just for fun. In the 1960s, here's how they do it. They sail a few boats up and down the river, joyously accompanied by drummers and bagpipers as they throw and spray the dye into the river. The dye is the whole thing different. Up ahead to the right. In the distance, up to the right, is a stone tower with a little dome on top. Stone tower with a onion dome up ahead to the right. That's the Hotel Intercontinental, finished in 1929 by Paul Schleicher. It's Art Deco style with neo-Egyptian and neo-Persian theming all around it, including the dome on top. Now, the reason for that theming is that it was built to be a temple for Shriners and Dancers in the 1920s. That was an engineering marvel for the 1920s to have something so heavy. Yet wobbly as a swimming pool that high up in the building. So they proved it could be done, and it's still there today.
Better this way.
Finally, folks, is the building with that white tile building with the clock tower. The Wrigley building with the clock ahead was just finished 100 years ago. It just turned 100 last year, finished in 1924. Designed by the Wrigley building is French Beaux-Arts style, painted as a portrait, a simple stack of floors, and then an
All right, it's gonna be 5 seconds, okay?
At the Wrigley
5
building
seconds
was
for photograph.
the Wrigley Chewing Gum Company, still based in Chicago, but not in this building anymore. It's a next office building now. And the Wrigley building is clad with about 300,000 individual white terracotta buildings. Now, terracotta building is very common. Because and folks, as we approach our top subject, the building where we started Leonard's Wood is the same location where 220 years ago, Joan Baptiste faced Fort Fairmont across the swampy mouth of the Chicago River on the shores of Lake Michigan. And with that, folks, we're approaching our dock. Now let me give you a couple pointers. Number one, do not take alcohol off the boat and if you're about to throw it away. Number two, I prefer that if you're still seated, please stay seated, because I have to walk down the aisle to be the first person off the boat. So please let me pass you before you start walking toward the gate. Number three, if you're looking for me at the end of our tour, I'm going to stand on the dock at the bottom of the ramp. You'll walk right in front of me. I'll be there to answer questions as you disembark. And be alert, everyone who's already standing, you're ready for a bump. We might bump against the dock, so be ready for that. And finally, let me tell you about you. Without folks like you choosing to spend time with us,